Welcome to the World of Horror Special Edition Quinnisode, episode 137. I'm Christina.
And I'm Quinn.
This is the podcast where Quinn and I have a conversation about a work of classic horror in our Midwestern accents. For this Quinnisode, we are looking at The Silence of the Lambs from 1991. Disclaimers for adult language and heavy spoilers. Let's move on to our first segment, Christina and Quinn chat. Hi, Quinn. How's it going?
Oh, hi, Christina. I didn't know you were coming. It's really nice to see you.
Just thought I'd drop by.
Yeah, things are, going quite well in what I call Quinn's World of Horror, which is my life. No, we're good. How are you?
I'm good. You can't deflect that fast. I mean, what's new? Any new?
Yeah, I got into a car accident.
Okay.
Yeah. And my good old hero, Christina Hare, was there and picked me up and brought me to the hospital when my sweat smelled of putrid anxiety and, I don't know, fight or flight hormone leakage, whatever. Ew! I was just turning left at a green arrow and somebody hit me running the red light, hit me. My poor, sweet, beautiful car is totaled. So I'm just kind of in the world of insurance hell.
But fortunately, no major injuries. You have some minor injuries or minor to medium grade injuries, but nothing structural.
Yes. I was burned by the airbags, the chemical burn, I guess, on my arm, and then a bit of a bigger burn on a thumb, my right thumb, which makes everything just a little bit more challenging, but it will be okay.
And who was it didn't believe that you were burned? Like the insurance adjuster or something?
Nobody believes that airbags do that. Most people have just said there's no way an airbag could do that. So, yes, the adjuster was like, oh no, airbags don't do that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna. He was like the collision guy, so I'm like, I'm not gonna talk to you about my injury anyways. But yeah, most people have said that's kind of rare. I mean, I think the sort of rug burn, quick burn when something sort of pops, and I put my arm up in front of my face to protect my beauty, and then my arm got it. I don't know why I put my arm in front of my face. I guess it was just really instinctual.
Yeah.
But then my right thumb, connected to my right arm, is what got burned pretty badly, and it's a nasty little burn. It's not big though, but yeah, it's a burn, and yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know that people have been injured. I've heard of people being injured with airbags and stuff, but the car's totaled. The person who ran the Reds' car's totaled. So yeah, it was quite a hit. And I've got a Honda Civic hatchback, and man, she took that hit hard and she protected me.
Yeah.
With the exception of her airbag, but I don't know. I think she took a pretty hard hit and I didn't get injured very much.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the person was running the red light, so they were accelerating when they smashed into you, and that's something I didn't think about until a day later. I was like, oh yeah, that's why the collision was so bad. I mean, at that intersection, no one should be going that fast.
Yeah, so. And it's 45 there anyway. So, and I will say that I'm fairly certain, because I do this pretty regularly, I'm fairly certain I paused at the green arrow because it's just a thing that I do. I've heard of people getting hit turning left. So I maybe even paused. And I think, I don't know, I assume she was probably on her phone, but who knows?
Yeah. A Lots of people are.
Yes, but I heard anecdotally at the accident that she had just come from a doctor and had received bad news. And then for about 3 days, I told that story. And when I told it to my brother, he said, "Oh, yeah, well, that sounds like something that you would say if you were in that circumstance." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I would totally say that. That's actually what I would say." And then I was like, "Oh, boom. That was an excuse."
Could be.
Yeah. But I feel for her too, because she's young. She had a new car. It was a week old, apparently.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, not great all around, but
no.
I was saved by Christina Hare, though.
Well, wait a second. I
Hero
mean,
alert. Hero
saved. I
alert.
don't.
No, well, I was in the middle of the road and had been for some time, just sort of baking in the North Carolina sun while people approached me awkwardly because I was freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
And then someone said, "Hey, can we call someone for you? Can we get in touch with somebody? You're not going to be able to get in your car, so you're going to need someone to pick you up." And I said, "I have no one." Which I was actually able to laugh about probably like 20 minutes after that happened. I could laugh about that. But then I called Christina and she was like, "Hello." And I was like, "I'm accident, pick me up." And she found me. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful.
Oh, well, you're welcome. It was kind of fortunate the way it worked out because I don't have my ringer on my phone and I just happened to see your call. So,
yeah.
And I like it that you flip into like drama Quinn in a crisis.
Oh, I'm so terrible in a crisis. That has been proven time and time again. I go to the worst case scenario. I'm in the middle of that road screaming, crying at a police officer that I have no one,
Yes,
which
I
is
love
never
it.
something I would do in my right mind. So yeah, that's where I go.
That's good to know. Well, when I came up to the scene, I saw a female figure and she was standing in the road with her hands on her forehead, like extended out. The elbows were extended out. So that posture where you're just like, oh my God, I can't even like believe that. I didn't know if it was you or the other person or who it was. But I was glad it wasn't you. Because at least by that point you had moved yourself away from the scene and
Yeah, I actually got escorted across the street by 2 firefighters.
Nice.
Yeah, and then they were like, "Okay, bye."
Wait, so who was the really skinny person? Was that the cop?
The cop, yes,
The meth
very,
head?
very thin. Well, I don't think so, but yeah, he was so tiny. Yes, and then we did have a really funny incident at the hospital. I just got checked because the accident wasn't my fault, so just to like get checked, and my arms were pretty swollen and had been, like sort of rug burn rashy, whatever. They were just swollen, and so just went to get checked, and then after we went through the whole process and everything was fine, then like new people came on duty, and so then the nurse came in to give me like the discharge papers, and he was a character.
Yep. I mean, you can't have a Quinn McLaughlin day, probably, without encountering at least one character. And this one, yeah, he was his name Sean? He
I think
was
so.
amazing. It's like he hadn't talked to anybody in like 4 days and he just like needed to have a convo.
Yeah, and I was at the point where I had talked to too many people and I had been way too vulnerable. But for some reason, that character personality, like when he walked in, I was like, I could talk to you all night. And then I said that to you when we were walking out, and you were like, "Oh yeah, I wasn't gonna stand there and listen to him go on any longer. And I was like, I like him.
I know. I saw that in your face and I'm like, we gotta go.
She likes this person. She wants to stay.
But another thing I thought about is I think everybody thought we were a lesbian couple because I moved into, mama bear protector mode or something, which is a good thing to know that, that's what I flip into, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you had your ex-husband as your emergency contact, understandably so. You haven't had an emergency since things have changed. And so I said, she's not married to him anymore. You can put me down.
And she was like, okay.
Okay, lesbian lady. But we are not. We are just super good friends.
Just friends.
Best friends.
Yeah.
We're adult ladies over 40 who call each other their best friend.
Is supporting each other in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really thankful to you. When I ended up telling my parents what had happened, they really stuck to the detail that you picked me up, and they would just kept saying over and over again how lucky I was that you did that. So they didn't really care that much about me or the crew, but they were really thankful for you. And I'm also thankful for Lindley and River, shout out, who are listeners, and Alex, who came yesterday and helped me clear out my car in a very, very weird situation at a weird tow lot that was haunted, probably.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. It is such a weird, creepy feeling to get all of your belongings out of your car that's been totaled. Yeah, I think I've done that twice. I just want to go back to your parents, though, because I feel like that's completely on brand for them to switch from whatever, from you to whatever else is going on.
Yeah, that is on brand. It was really funny, but I was with them on that at that moment too, though. I was like, yeah, let's just talk about that because that's safe.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Lindley and River also recently gave my dog Rosie some tiny tennis balls, Kong tennis balls, and she has not really brought them upstairs.
Right
since
on
the
cue.
first day where I found 3 in my bed, and she just went downstairs and brought one up. So
she's nesting, or what is she?
She's throwing it up in the air.
Oh.
And now she's dropped it about 3 times already. Oh gosh. Yeah, I kind of want to get somebody to take Rosie out on a play date or something. She needs some running, and I'm not available for that. But yeah. So yeah, but that is very much on brand with my parents. That's funny. It's a funny detail. And also the nurse, Sean, was wearing during the day an anti-snore strip.
Yes, that's such a good detail. If this were a short story, we would definitely want that to be in that. That's one of the first things. So he looked kind of like, okay, my memory is not good. No one's is really, it turns out. But I believe he was blonde and he wore glasses and he had the snore strip on his nose, white guy, probably gay, but doesn't matter. And wanted to talk, just, needed to talk about some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. He was giving off, post, 3-day after semester ends Quinn vibes, where it's I need someone, and I need someone weird, and I'm going to do weird things, and I'm going to say weird things, and I need to be listened to. And I would like for these relationships to blossom and then never see each other again. Those are very much me vibes.
Wasn't he talking about his dogs or something? I think I felt
Oh my God, I don't remember that at all.
But I'm just like, whatever it was like, this is not, leaving the emergency room appropriate
No,
conversation. This
no,
is
no.
more like we met in line waiting to go into an estate sale
Yes. Oh
conversation.
yeah, that's the other place we probably would have met Sean, I
Yeah,
think.
I think so.
Or buying worms at a tackle shop.
Could be. Could be.
And I don't remember him having blonde hair. I feel like he had gray hair.
I don't know. I
I don't know
mean,
either, but
I've tried to
yeah,
erase from my
yeah.
memory, actively erase it. But one thing I never want to erase from my memory is the film we're discussing today.
Oh, well, I don't know. I might be interested in erasing it, but no, just kidding.
So one of the so I wanted to talk about this movie. Obviously, so much has already been said about it. It came out in 1991, and I feel like, you know, if you haven't seen it, WoHos, what are you even doing with your life? This is a classic that I feel like it should be required watching if you want to call yourself a horror fan or a film fan, um, in any measure. And so, accordingly, you showed this to your film class. And so, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today, Quinn, was I wanted to know what the reaction of this film was in your
Okay,
film
so
class.
yeah, so I recently had a face-to-face film class and it was added at the very last moment. So it was very low enrolled, and I actually haven't taught film face-to-face probably for about 2 years. So I was excited, but also it was just under weird circumstances. We usually get booked in this old room that's kind of looks like a theater. Um, but I got booked in the dental science building in an interior room with no windows, thankfully. But I mean, very small, very strange, not very film, not like your, atmosphere that you would choose to watch a film in or have a film class. And I didn't love that idea from the beginning, but it worked. I had 7 students in it who were very, very engaged, and 2 who were maybe a little bit too passionate for my liking at times. But I basically kind of let them steer what we did after we went through the basics and all the elements of film and some ideology and stuff. So then I kind of let them take it where they wanted to. And I knew from the beginning that they were very much horror fans. So I thought it would go in this direction, but I've never had a class elect to watch The Silence of the Lambs, and I've never showed it in a class. So when they picked that to vote on, I thought, well, this one will not be chosen. Unanimously, everybody picked it, and I could not really get away with like steering them in a different direction, nor did I think that much about it. So I went ahead and got the movie. I went ahead and rented the movie, and started showing it. None of them had seen it. And also, I should add, all of the students, I'm pretty sure, I'm estimating that they were 21 and younger. So quite young. I know one of them was in high school. So young, and none of them had seen it. And they were really, really excited to see it, especially after I put the trailer up when I had them choose. And so I'm not thinking anything of it, honestly. And I mean, I think you mentioned, the one part that you might be concerned about is it's pretty gory, with the skin stuff when Lecter is in the makeshift jail, with the police officers. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. But yeah, almost, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes in, my whole body was like struck with anxiety of like, oh, great. Here we go. This is going to be on my, faculty evaluations, and have to like suggest therapy and stuff for them. They loved the film. So despite the fact that it is dated and there's a lot of there's a lot of really like un-PC sentiments and dialogue, and there's a lot of violence, and it is gory, and it is very scary. They loved it so much, and they were just struck by it, and they basically were making sort of connecting the dots in terms of how this really does serve as one of the first great examples of something like this that we now see so much of. But to see kind of how it was done, I mean, this isn't the first type of story like this told in 1991, but I would say like it is so well done.
Yeah, and I do think it was kind of the blueprint for a lot of the stuff that we see today. But I think I saw this in the theater. If not, I saw it like shortly thereafter. And there was, what I remember about it was, is it Chilton, the guy who runs the prison, explaining about Lecter and the story about the nurse and how his heart rate didn't go above a certain level. And you get all this information about who Lecter is before you meet him. And then the camera just like moving up to his cell and Anthony Hopkins just standing there stock straight. I was just like, this is just like, and this is before he's even said anything. That all was just extremely frightening and eerie to me.
I was trying to think of like the moment that it struck me as, what am I doing showing this to like these kids, was in that exact scene when you're sort of following her walking through the hallway of prisoners, and Miggs says, I can smell your cunt or something, right?
Yeah.
Then one of my students was like, oh boy. And I was like, darn, what am I doing? Oh, Fudgy the Whale, what have I done? And it just, that freaked me out. But after that, I kind of settled down a bit. But I mean, it was still, it did not feel super safe watching it, showing it. It's rough. And honestly, it's one of those movies that it's kind of, it sort of proves where I am or how my tastes have changed, I think, or like things that I can handle, situations that I can handle, or that I will, watch or be involved with. Like this stuff, a lot of it freaked me out. And I've seen this movie a lot. I grew up with it. I never felt like it was too violent, too gory, too scary. And this time it freaked me out.
I think it is very freaky. And I mean, aside from the weird prison that he's in, he's sort of in this like box in the middle of this room. And we see when he escapes, we see his face as he's like killing the cop with the baton. And so you just have to sort of imagine what's happening. But there's this blood that's like splattering on Lecter's face, and he's just calmly beating this guy to death. And then we get the shot of the guy who's like, hung up like an angel, and his guts are all out and everything like that. But aside from those two scenes, we really don't see too much. It's more what's told to us and what we have to envision. And I always think that's worse.
Yeah. And it is it's an interesting perspective of women in a career that women were really not in. So like you do get a pretty good impression of, I think he did a good job of showing that with very little dialogue when that is kind of really magnified, when she's in the elevator and all of these men are towering over her and she's just like, yeah, and I think you did a great job of that, because I think that's important to show something like that. And I think that it could be shown in a really similar way today, because I think the same situation occurs where this is just not, we see more men in this career than women. And yeah, I liked what he did with those scenes because he's not telling you, they're not talking about things necessarily, but you get this, dominant impression from it. I liked that. I thought that was great.
I think casting like Jodie Foster, who I think is like 5'2", and very slight. And then, of course, in her 20s, she was even smaller than she is today. But, yeah, that's such a wonderful shot when she goes into the elevator. But also just having all the men like just stare straight down the camera. So you're getting her perspective of these like men who are like literally in her face constantly. I thought was really great. I mean, the camera work and the cinematography is just, that's, I would like to see a study of that because I think that's one of the coolest parts of this movie.
Yeah. Another great example of that is like when they're starting to do, before they start the autopsy.
So you were saying right before the autopsy?
Right before the autopsy scene, when she is in a different county with all of the local police officers, we have that same thing where she is alone in this room full of men who are looking at her like either she shouldn't be there or they want to jump her or take her out and show her to their mother. It's like you can see a lot of different intentions. And I like that it's done non-verbally. Some of the things that she talks about with Jack, they say aloud, like, oh, I couldn't show them, that you're an expert or something, something like that, some sort of comment there. But it's better when it's done sort of non-verbally, I think. And I think if you can convey that message in different ways over and over again throughout a film, that's pretty successful to do it non-verbally. And you get everything that you need just by looking at the men's faces, who are judging in different ways, I think, too. It isn't just a clear cut, like, you shouldn't be here because you're a woman. It's like, you shouldn't be here because you're a woman. Also, you're a woman, so I get to, have sex with you. And, I don't know. It just, you can see that. It's very visibly obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just, when you were talking before about how, a lot of this could be, shot in the same way or the sentiment could be shared in the same way today. I was just thinking about this like TikTok that I saw, and I don't know what the context was, but it was a female pilot who was being questioned. And so this guy was like on this, like the kind of thing where the guy's on the stage above her. And so she introduced herself and she didn't say pilot, but she said something like pilot. And then he wasn't paying attention. And so he said, walk us through one of your, a typical day as a stewardess. And she said, I'm a pilot. And someone else had like told him, off mic, she's a pilot. And he's like, oh, right. Okay. I don't know why I said that. And she just like took a second and then, continued. But I was just like, yeah, that's kind of still what it's like to be a woman and not be taken seriously, especially when you're in an industry that's male dominated.
Yeah. And I think most are still.
Yeah. Unless it's a service, industry, but yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. So, and I don't know at the time, I'm sure, I got all that on some level, but I think it's interesting. I'm just interested to hear more about what your young students thought about this, because I'm not sure I got it all, at that age when I saw it.
They were really focused on, we didn't talk a lot about the dynamics, between the characters necessarily. because they really wanted to talk so much about the suspense and how the movie really doesn't let you breathe in many ways because it's pretty short and there is a lot going on, and some things are a little bit disjointed, not in a bad way, but you're following, the story of Lecter and how he came to be in this prison, but then there's these other crimes going on and you're seeing bits and pieces of it, and you're getting bits and pieces of evidence and kind of putting it together yourself. And I think they were really taken aback by how well that was done. And I think, too, one of the best things about this film is like it is the most perfect example of an amazing use of parallel editing. So parallel editing is showing things that are going on at the same time in order to evoke suspense because you're concerned, oh my gosh, this is happening at the same time. I'm freaking out. And of course, near the end, when she does find Buffalo Bill, we think that Jack is finding Buffalo Bill. And so at the same time, we're following these two people coming into a house, and where it's not known, until maybe like 5 minutes into that scene that she's there by herself with no backup because he's, pretty much sure of the idea that he's at the right house. And then the lighting as well, with all the lights off, and Buffalo Bill has the night vision. And honestly, that scene, that is an amazing piece of cinema. And it is so frightening. And it's just so well done. And we see stuff like that now in shows and things, but I don't think it's that good. Like those are the things that my students were really like hanging on to. We didn't talk a lot about the outdated stuff or about, the relationships of the people or how she's treated and how we're supposed to really, see that in terms of her sort of in this isolating career. We really talked mostly like they couldn't get past just how well he presented and put you in a very suspenseful and intense film. Pretty much the entire film is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's very little, like in the beginning, there's sort of a stage setting and it's not that suspenseful, but as soon as the story kicks off, I mean, even when she goes to that storage facility, the way, I mean, it's at night. She needs a jack to get the door open, and there's this guy there. Is he okay? And it's, I remember that scene being one that I was really, in suspense for, especially the first time I saw it, And then finding the head at the end of that scene in the jar, it's like, wait, what? What are we doing now?
Yeah, and is she going to get back out safely? And yeah, there is the guy who drives the owner, and she's like, can he help? And he's like, he doesn't do anything physical. And it's like, what is going on? It's just, I don't know. Everything is very off. And one of the scenes that got me this time was when Buffalo Bill, sort of gets Catherine to help him put his couch in the van and is like, well, you get in there, which is, and all my students were like, no, but when he actually cuts her top off in the back, that scene just sent shivers down my spine. And then he sees like the size 14 and he's like, oh yeah, that's good. Like I just don't, that freaks me out. And that's a simple thing. And it's not really something that someone would be like, that's masterful. And maybe it's not, but it's done so well. And it's done so well in terms of the development of his character, because we don't know anything about him at this point. We suspect that he's probably behind this, but we don't know what he's capable of. And we don't really know what he's doing with these women, so that freaked me out this time. And there were a lot of audible gasps in the room. And honestly, that's pretty cool for a 1991 film.
Yeah.
To have that effect on these young kids who are just like on their phones all the time. Not that I'm not, but yeah, they were like every turn, you know, and again, that parallel editing, that fucking amps your anxiety. If it's done well, oof, I'll take parallel editing any day if it's done well, because I love it. I think it's a cool editing technique.
And I don't know, I just want to look up Demme's filmography because I just feel like I think this was a surprise to people that he was capable of this kind of stuff. Because I remember the one with Melanie Griffith and Jeff Daniels. Do you know the one I'm talking about? It was a comedy, a sex comedy. Ray Liotta is in it. And I know he had directed the Stop Making Sense documentary for Talking Heads. But I mean, I don't think people really took him all that seriously. And so, this was just kind of an amazing accomplishment. And I just love it when people, surprise you like that. Yeah. Well, he had done Philadelphia was later. Sorry. Something Wild is the one I was talking about in 1986. And then he went on, of course, to do the remake of The Manchurian Candidate. I don't know how I feel about that, but some people like it. I know that some people think it's a good film. And the Stop Making Sense documentary, I think, is, amazing. But yeah, so this was after both of those. Yeah, I'm surprised kind of that he got this, and I think he really wowed people in terms of how he directed his actors. And Tak Fujimoto was the cinematographer, and I was a fan of his from little, like from Lethal Weapon. I was just like, this guy. I was like, whenever I saw Tak Fujimoto, I was like, this is gonna be good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm just looking at stats in the notes. It was released on February 14th, 91.
Oh, I think that's so funny when they do that.
Like a little Valentine's Day flick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked it that my students didn't get, not that, I don't want to say hung up on, because like I don't want to pretend like it's not important to talk about stuff, this outdated language and whatnot. But, people tend to get caught up in that. And when you're in a film class, like I was just very much, I don't know, I was impressed that they did not talk about that necessarily, or we mentioned it perhaps and then moved on really quickly to, cinematography and especially editing, because this film I think is an editing masterpiece. But yeah, I think that's impressive to look beyond that, because that's definitely something that is going to catch your attention watching it in 2024.
Yeah, and I would like I asked a trans person, how they felt about this, and they said, "Oh, I love that movie." And then I said, "Well, what about, Buffalo Bill and his characterization?" And they said, "Well, yeah, maybe I have to have another look at that film." And I don't. I read the book, but I don't. I think it's in the book. I think that's where it comes from. The idea that Buffalo Bill just feels like alienated from himself. He hates himself so much. And so he's trying to be the opposite of himself, which is not what it is to be trans. And so, and they were using the term transsexual in the film in 91. And Lecter says he's not a true transsexual. And then she says, yeah, because transsexuals are usually very passive. And I'm like, wait, what? So there's a lot of questionable characterization of Buffalo Bill. And in the book, I do remember I read it, and trying to think when I read it, if I read it before or after I saw the film. But that was the only time in my adult life I remember I finished the novel and I slept with the lights on. Ooh. Intentionally, because the book goes a lot more in detail into Buffalo Bill's psychology, and it's pretty messed up inside his head, according to, how Thomas Harris has written him.
Yeah. When I think about this movie, I don't think about all the great things we're talking about first. The first thing that comes to mind is, sir, have you seen this woman? Oh, yeah. She's not a great big fat person. And I wish that wasn't the first thing that came to mind, but every single time that line, and then she's like, yeah, she's a big woman.
I really love Ted Levine. Of course, he's gone on to do a lot of really, cool roles, not the least of which is his role in Monk. But I love his face here. He's so kind of beautiful and kind of dreamy looking to me. But it is sort of a strange and creepy character. And there's the trans stuff. I don't even want to call it that, but his piercing his nipple himself, and like his weird tattoos and his makeup and the way he dresses and the way he dances, and it's all very and his voice is very strange. But also, if you look around at his room, he has like a Nazi quilt or something. So I think the idea is that he's been experimenting with a lot of different identities throughout his life, and it just all kind of and I think Ted Levine made the best of it.
I do too. I think that he made that an iconic character that is definitely impossible to define, really. And he left this lasting impression that leaves, the conversation open in 2024 to discuss and not really fully understand and, put details together and still be something to discuss. Well, I think who could have done that.
No, and the part where, the very famous line about, it puts the lotion in the basket or it gets the hose again. And she's crying at that point and she's begging for her life. And he's trying to dissociate as much as he can and, erase her humanity as much as he can. And he's like catching himself crying, and then he, loses his temper. And that whole part, it's very brief, but I think it's really great.
Yeah. And I also like it. This is not about his characterization or anything, but I do like it that, us as a 2024 audience having just had this recent spike in true crime over the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years or whatever. And also maybe understanding, seeing portrayals of people who work in that field more often. I liked it when they showed the news clip of Catherine's mother, who's a senator, talking about her. And then you have a scene of Jodie Foster and another female coworker of hers talking about how smart it is that she kept saying Catherine is kind and using her name and just talking about her kindness and her love of animals and people, and how they're like, that's so smart that she did that. She's humanizing her and making it difficult, for someone who has her right now to see her as a thing more, this is obviously the human side of her. But I think that's smart even to do that little tiny explanation, because that wasn't something that I think we saw in media or in film or television at that time. We see it now more, of course, and we understand when things like that happen, we can say, oh, well, that's smart. But this was one of the first things I think that kind of pointed out some of these insider thoughts on psychology of violent offenders. And, so I thought that was cool.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And I really like the portrayal of the senator and Catherine herself. And I have really followed Brooke Smith's career, and I love her too. And I would love to talk to her on the podcast. That would be so amazing. But I love her. I mean, first we just see her face, and she's rocking out to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, "American Girl." Come on, it's iconic, and I just love her. And I like how she, after she sees the fingernails in the sort of well that she's in, she changes her tactic, so she's not begging for her life anymore. Now she is threatening him with, harm to the dog. "I'm going to kill your dog if you don't let me out of here." And yeah, I just love it that she's so tough. And of course, when she realizes that Jodie Foster is in the house, and she calls her a bitch. She's like, "You bitch, let me out of here."
I love that.
Love her. Love it. And I love it that Foster's not really or Starling's not really sure, like, what to do. Like, she wants to calm her, but she's got to catch gum, um, and she's really, really, I think, trying to also like tamp down her soft feelings there. She's just trying to make herself very hard, and she goes into kind of like business mode, until, of course, the lights are out in the basement, and that is such a terrifying scene.
It really is. It's just done so well that you have no idea. I mean, anything could happen. Absolutely anything.
Yeah.
You don't see anything. You are in the same situation, and then to see his hand sort of like touch her shoulder, then push away. I also love it that she takes that when she is finally sort of rescued, she takes the dog with her.
Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah. Something my students said too, which I wrote down because I thought it was so incredibly smart. They talked about the angles, because we talk a lot about angles in my class, and what, if you see a high angle, then you immediately, it's like you're looking down on someone, so someone is more vulnerable. And a low angle does the opposite. It shows their power. And so, while those angles don't always mean that, that's where you can assume at least a starting point, typically. And a lot of times they do mean that. So there were a lot of high and low angles with Clarice and Lecter in the beginning, and they caught on to that really quickly. They they don't even out exactly, but they get more even, meaning like the relationship evens out, because at first you have low angles on Lecter and high angles on Clarice, and then they do kind of even out as their relationship evens out a little bit. And I was like, you guys are smart. Yeah, I mean, that was just a cool thing to pick up on, I thought. What else did they?
Well, what a gift that you gave them, to be able to interpret film in that way. I mean, I feel like I was really lucky because I got to take a film class in high school, and I think my film teacher had really good taste in film. And so I learned some of those things. But I mean, if nobody had pointed them out to me, I don't know if I would have picked up on that.
Yeah, and I mean, just even knowing a couple of things to like have a base, I think makes an experience of watching a film so much more enjoyable. I'm not somebody that can analyze as I go. I have to watch a movie and sort of dumb Quinn mode just to watch it, and then I can go at it the second viewing. But so these students that I have, I mean, they're so smart that they can pick it up, on first watch. I never do that. I never think ahead. I never connect dots, because I don't want to do that. I want to like experience it sort of as organically as possible. But also, I'm never good at that stuff anyway. So I say I don't do it to experience it, but it's also not something that I oftentimes see. Like, I don't get the hints. You're very good at that. Like, your brain works very differently than mine.
Yeah.
So you and I can watch the same show and I'll be like, la, da, 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 and you're like, well, I know what's happening. I know exactly what's going to happen. And like 9 times out of 10, it does happen that way. And I'm like, how'd you see that coming? But to be able to do that when you have this sort of really new raw knowledge of just even a couple things like those angles, it really like, it gives you just a good starting point to be able to analyze so much. So,
well, I think part of that just, I've been thinking about my mom a lot lately, just weird sidebar. I don't know, just like stuff's been reminding me of her, or like I just finished up Elspeth, which was on CBS. And CBS usually makes shows that are pitched at like an older audience in general. But this one, I'm sure my mom would have just freaking loved the show. And I just finished it, and I was just like, I don't know if she has any opportunity, where she is to know about that show, but I just feel like she would love it. But we would watch like Alfred Hitchcock Presents or Twilight Zone from when I was very young. And she would say, okay, what do you think is going to happen? And so she almost like trained me to like solve puzzles, in terms of like story, credit to Diana. She was the one who taught me how to do that. And so I have positive associations with that. But yeah, but beyond that, I think we're just sort of built differently, and we, approach art differently. And so, and that's great. That's why it's so fun to talk to you about stuff like this.
Yeah, that makes me think. Sometimes I think about like, what if I did an escape room? I wouldn't, because to me that would be a nightmare scenario. It would truly, I don't know, amp me. But I would want to do one with you if I was forced to do one, because I feel like you could take it calmly and see things more objectively and get us out of there. Whereas I would be screaming in the middle of the road, I have no one. And you are like telling people, that's not our emergency contact. Let me take care of this. And I know this is going to happen. Like, I love that. I think I like that. I love that.
I think if you do, I would recommend doing an escape room, but you do want to be really careful who you do one with. I could see it's not so much, the stakes are super low, right? You have to solve these puzzles within 45 minutes or you lose the game. They are going to let you out of the room. So the stakes are super low, but I could see so many couples, getting into arguments over this kind of thing. And I did my first one with Mr. C, and it was just, I don't know why, but we were just like playful about it. And it wasn't about like, no, I think we should do this. And the other person saying, no, that's stupid. Why would you, it was just like, let's try this. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And I think because neither one of us had done one, it worked out that way. And then I did one with my kids and we did not escape, both of the boys. And then I did one with Mac and his boyfriend. And young people, that's a good people to have on your team, because I don't know, they just think about things differently. So
yeah, I think that could be, I don't know. It's probably the effect of the technology having changed and we're now in a world where everyone's doing a million things at one time. So I still don't do well with that. I don't do well multitasking. Like, I need to throw myself into something. But that's really hard to do anyways with my brain. So my brain is like, we do want to multitask. We want to totally multitask. But then something is like, no, we can't do that. So I think like, as far as my students like picking up on these basic elements and then like being able to sort of see them so vividly when watching a movie. Of course, this was the very end of the semester. This was like the second to last film that we watched. And they had been doing a great job since day one. They were really open to everything. And, you know, one of them had a major theater background, and that was really cool. And that helped. And his mother was a theater director. And so he came at it he was really into mise-en-scène, but like I think that it's almost a superpower that they have, that they've kind of waded through these layers and layers of multitasking, and then they can like see things differently.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they see those angles highlighted, whereas for me, I'm like, oh, I got to keep sifting through it. I got to watch it again and again and again, and then I can focus on cinematography. And then I'll watch it again and focus on editing. And like, you know, that's my brain. It takes me longer to do things. And I got to go in it from a different angle. But these people can see a lot of really great things, I think. I think it's just, I don't know, this generation they're so smart.
I think part of it is playing video games. And that's not something that I do, but most young people I know do that. And I think there's story built into video games. And I know that Mac is not the paradigm for all people in their late 20s, but from a young age, very young. I remember when I was teaching high school, so that was I don't know what that was. 04, so he was 8. Yeah. And we watched Romeo and Juliet. We watched the Zeffirelli version, and we watched To Kill a Mockingbird. And he, in both cases, was like, oh, I see that those two families are fighting, but I think that in the end, there's going to be something bad that happens because these people, you know, I mean, he had it all figured out and he knew who Boo Radley was. He was just like, I think I know who's leaving the stuff in the tree, and people don't like him, but they don't understand him. And I was just like, how do you know this? Like at such a young age, but, and my mom, again, pointed out pattern recognition. Like he had really good pattern recognition in terms of like stories and things like that. And like I said, I think he's like a apex version of people in their late 20s because I think he's just super bright, and super sensitive and lots of superlatives. But yeah, that's one thing that he has going on. And I feel like the people who are younger than he is, have just had a lot of practice with narrative in different modalities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That makes so much sense. I think you're right. Because even I grew up playing video games as well, but that was Nintendo. And you were really just focused on one thing, you know, and that is really those were my formative years, just trying to focus on one thing, you know, and I think that's now when I spread my stuff, when I get spread thin, I often do. And of course, this past semester, which is now thankfully over, but you and I both were kind of like, you know, overloaded with classes and stuff. But I think that my students, if I'm especially speaking of this small little class, like they were so smart, and it's really cool to see because if you teach a lot of writing classes and classes that are tied to UGETSIs like you do, then it feels like you have to cover a certain amount of things in a short amount of time, and it gets you down when students like will do well at first and then quit kind of, or like stop turning things in or stop coming to class or just stop caring in general. And then it's a gift to have a class like this where it's a very tiny class, and probably because several of them were really passionate about it, it kind of elevated everyone, I guess, you know? And so when you see these really young people, like really sort of excelling in a class and just doing this amazing work, like it's so refreshing. you know, and you have to have a class like that every once in a while. And I hope everyone does. This was my class, you know, for this past year, that it was really refreshing, and it was challenging because I did have some students who were like, you know, like a little too over the top, and I had to kind of corral them. But I mean, that's not a bad problem to have when I think about other issues I can have, but it also really highlights the fact that these people growing up now, like, they are being trained to be able to do so many great, wonderful things if they just like hone their skills in some way. Like, they could do anything. And I think people are like, this generation sucks, and everyone says it about every other generation. But like, they are really equipped to do great things because of this, you know, because of growing up in these worlds of narratives upon narrative and layers, and, you know, seeing the patterns. That's such an amazing skill to have.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, not everybody has it by any stretch. But one thing I wanted to say, I'm not trying to like blow smoke up your ass or anything like that, but I saw you at the end of one semester a couple of years ago. I think you were prepping people for the final exam, or maybe it was the final exam. And the movie that they were analyzing was No Country for Old Men. And I thought, oh, these dummies, they're never going to be able to understand this. And they were coming up with the most brilliant stuff. But I don't think that's like an accident. I think that that's due to having a great teacher like you.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think the semester before that, I was like, okay, what do you want to do, Quinn? And I was like, I want to get them to critically think about these movies and to create their own questions, and then to move through it independently, but feel like they are, you know, creating this direction, or like, you know, and I tried to start doing that probably around that time. But that makes me happy. Thank you. I try to do it. I write a lot of discussion questions, and I try to make them write them in a similar way. But it just kind of like, it allows them to take the wheel, you know, because like then they're responsible for creating this analysis and for posing these questions to their peers. And I like that. I think that it's good. It's a good thing to have them do that work, and then it's developing a skill. I don't know, but
yeah, I tried to do the same thing, and I was just a little too honest with my students this last semester. I just said, you know what, I'm tired, and so I feel like I'm working harder than you all are. So now you're going to come up with the review questions. And then that came and bit me on my ass in the evaluations. People were like, she kept talking about how tired she was. And I don't think it was very professional for her to have to, you know, have us do the review ourselves. And I'm like, okay, that's actually called the flipped classroom. It's a technique that's been around for 25 years or whatever. So,
this semester nearly killed us.
I mean, it was WoHos. If you don't know, we actually haven't talked a lot about it, but Quinn and I taught more than we normally do. We were both given too many classes, I would say.
Perhaps more than we should have. But I remember you telling me that you saw that somebody had commented, she kept saying she was real tired. And my reaction to that was to think of like one of the last days in class, in my 111 class. I just like stared at them and then like looked down, and I said, you can do it, Quinn. You can do it, Quinn. No, you can't do it, Quinn. And I was saying it aloud. I was like, oh no. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's really, to be honest.
It's really gotten under my skin. I just feel like they are one thing I think is they are credulous, some of them. So I feel like they believe everything I tell them. And I come from a family where sarcasm was a love language. So it's like, you know, I think the approach, I think I have to shift my approach a little bit and lie a little more and not be so like heart wide open and honest.
Yeah, I'm super stream of consciousness. Like, I will tell everyone in the world that I'm going to the bathroom if I'm going to the bathroom. So much so that somebody will be like, you don't have to tell anyone that. And I'm like, no, I do though. It's not like I'm asking permission. I just need to tell you exactly everything that's going on. Like I'm an omniscient narrator of my own life.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about some trivia and letterboxd, and then let's get out of here, Quinn.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's see here. The last shot of the movie, the shot that pans up and shows Lecter following Chilton down the Bahamian street, is one of the longest continuous takes shot on film, clocking in at just under 5 minutes, under 5.5 minutes. It's also a rare example of a modern movie showing the entirety of its end credits over images rather than a black screen.
I love that.
So, Pearl, I don't know how long that shot is. I think it's over 4 minutes where she's just smiling in that, in that way that just, have you seen Pearl?
No, and
Oh,
tell you,
no.
it just
Oh,
on Amazon Prime. And so I've been like trying to find things to watch because I'm trying to like let my body kind of rest and whatever. Because if I do too much, I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed. So
I'm
Amazon,
sorry.
once I turn it on, it's gonna like go through like new previews or something, and it was showing me a preview of that, and I didn't know what it was showing me, and I was like, I want to watch this movie, and then I was like, oh my god, this is Pearl. Of course, I have to watch this movie, and I cannot. It's sacrilegious that I haven't yet. So no, I'm gonna watch it though. I was like so enticed by not even knowing what it was in that moment, and like being like, oh, I want to see this.
I'll just say, now that I've sort of ruined something for you, that Pearl relates to that little bit of trivia from Silence of the Lambs.
Okay, I'm excited, and I won't remember that, or I won't put it together because of our previous conversation. You know why.
Right, of course. Sir Anthony Hopkins described his voice for Dr. Hannibal Lecter as a combination of Truman Capote and Katharine Hepburn.
Oh my god. I adore that. I see it. I'm struck by that. I want to watch the whole movie just for that. No.
Would you like to read the 5-star letterbox reviews?
Sure, we know I'm gonna bumble these in some way, but so 5 stars from Little Bird 501. Bro, if the men in my workplace treated me like that, I would also befriend Hannibal Lecter. Oh my god. Yeah.
No doubt.
Good point. All right, another 5-star review from Their Mary 82. This movie has me in a chokehold. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, is this As I Live and Breathe? Is this Stephen McDonald?
Yes.
5-star review from our very own Stephen McDonald. Yearly rewatch of my fave problematic movie. Oh, that's perfect. Perfection. As I live and breathe.
People aren't gonna want to know what that is, but that's okay. That's a little mystery.
Oh, they're not gonna know who Stefan is?
No, they know who Stefan is. They're not gonna know why you're saying "as I live and breathe."
Oh, I'm saying that because when I showed up to this chat, Christina Hare said that to me. And then I said, oh, I always say that to like a coworker that we have.
It's just a funny thing to say.
It is. And you ought to do it with a real deep Southern accent. And then there's another one. I don't know if this is just the duplicate or if Stefan rewatched it again and used his same review, which I want to think that he did, but he didn't because it's
I just copied it twice.
Okay, I like it though. This makes me laugh in a weird way.
Amanda Firestone gave it a 0.5 star. Hated every second of this, but I learned what quid pro quo means. Thanks, Hannibal.
Oh, Amanda, I bet you learned that from The Lion King, though, if you're honest with yourself. It's like in a song.
That's such a good point.
Quid pro quo.
I love Jeremy Irons in that film, though. Oh my gosh, he's so scary and creepy,
He is so amazing.
You have no idea. I can't do it, but he's so great. Garf Lover, give it a half star. I want to like this movie, but the transphobia is a motherfucking MF vibe killer. Yeah, I get that. And I feel like that is definitely in there, and I could definitely understand it being a vibe killer.
Yeah, same.
Justin gave it a half star. What the fuck is a fava bean? Look, there's this thing called Google. They even have like Google Images. But lepidoroptophobia is the fear of butterflies or moths.
Ooh, I like butterflies, but moths and cocoons freak me out.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know what's going on in there. I don't want to see it going on. And the reason we don't see what's going on, and there's a reason that there's a cocoon. We should not be seeing that. And that worries me so much.
Did you ever have like caterpillars and cocoons and stuff like in your classroom when you were a kid?
Oh no.
Oh no. Not in Michigan.
No. We had a turtle named Dwayne.
Oh, you had a turtle named what?
Dwayne.
Something I just learned from TikTok again is that tortoises are extremely territorial. So there was like a sanctuary person or some person who had a tortoise and then had two turtles and was just sort of talking to the camera, and the tortoise like turned and he goes, "Oh my God, he wants to eat the turtles." Like, you know, he's kind of like, "This is my space," or whatever. I'm like, I had no idea.
You know, that makes a lot of sense. I once
the turtles were fine.
A tortoise, and
Sorry,
I swear he took over the whole apartment.
No. Wait, what?
I said that makes a lot of sense. I once roomed with a tortoise. He took over the whole apartment.
That's very funny. I'm sorry, I was talking all over that. That was very funny.
No, it wasn't that funny at all.
That was kind of funny. Would you recommend this film, Quinn?
I would absolutely recommend this film. I would even show it to young students. Oh, I did. I would recommend this film. I do think, you know, some of those, that half star in terms of the transphobia, yeah, that's absolutely there. I would probably kind of do a trigger warning. I wished I would have done a better one. I want to get better at that. But I would recommend it with a bit of a trigger warning. And also I would say, you know, in terms of the idea that we see so much violence and blood and everything on screen, and we don't see a whole lot on screen here, but it is just as thrilling and intense, if not more, than so much that's out there now. So I would put that in my trigger warning too.
I wanted to ask you earlier in this conversation if you would ever consider doing Night of the Hunter with your class.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I would probably like put it out there as an option in a list. Yeah, I think I would.
I think that would be such a great one to analyze.
Yeah, I do too. That's a hard watch. That song too. That will never leave my head if I hear it, whenever I hear it.
Well, thank you, cue balls and WoHos. Sorry, let me start that again. Thank you, Quinn, for having this conversation with me today about The Silence of the Lambs.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. Plus, I just got to tell you about what my students thought of it. And that was a cool aspect of this mini too. But thanks so much.
You're welcome. And thank you, Cue Balls and WoHos, for joining us. Okay, I think we're world famous in Carolina is not really working. So I feel like we need a different closing statement. It could be a call to action. It could just be, as I live and breathe.
As I live and breathe. Or it could be more dicks, since it is a Quinn.
We could go back to more dicks because we still are not seeing enough full frontal in American movies, for sure.
Yeah, and if anything, in Silence of the Lambs, we saw anti-full frontal.
Oh, good point.
It's a real slap in the face to us.
Oh my God. Okay, well, we're going back to it.
Yeah.
It's settled. Thank you, Cue Balls and WoHos, for joining us for this special edition Quinny-sode. Next time on the main show, Mac and I will be looking at squishy body horror films. We will be reviewing Society from the US and Existenz from Canada. Remember, WoHos and Cue Balls, we love you and don't go into the basement. And more dicks. Oh my God.
Oh my God, this movie really is like a don't go into the basement.
It is.